So, welcome to the podcast of Women Who Make It Happen, Journeys to Success with Emilié. Thank you so much for joining today. Obviously, really keen to kind of deep dive on some of the aspects that we've already spoken about. For the benefit of everyone watching this, it would probably be good to do a couple of introductions from both sides, and then we'll kind of deep dive into your journey, where you started, how you got to where you are, how regulations would have changed over the years, and how the financial crime background has evolved. Also be interesting to understand from where you were in a consultancy and various other financial institutions, how the regulator would have worked with them and the agility behind the regulations from all the different locations you've been involved in, and then more just into the challenges and successes of your career, and just understanding where you would give advice to people who are looking to get into this space. So I suppose just to kick us off, so I'm Anna, I work for Interquest, so I lead their European footprint based in the Netherlands. And that's with a strong focus on risk, regulation and compliance. And it also breaks down into data and analytics, engineering and product to best support financial service institutions. Over to you.
Yes, hi, thanks for having me. And my name is Emilié Kuivaniemi. I am born and raised in Sweden with Finnish roots. That's why my surname. And now I am living in Luxembourg since 8 years back with my son who just turned 1, my boyfriend and my dog Otis.
Oh, amazing. And I suppose as well, obviously you've moved to a few different countries at the same time. It'd be good to just understand where your journey started and kind of what got you to all of these relocations and the drivers behind it, because I always think relocation is something which is a word thrown around, but there's a lot of intensity that goes with relocation, and that's a whole complete life start over or career journey. So it'd be good just to understand your journey from kind of where it all started to where you are today.
Sure. I started quite early. I was already 14 when I decided I wanted to study law. So already
what was the interest when you were 14? Because I remember when I was 14 I had no idea what I wanted for dinner.
Exactly. I didn't know for sure, but it was a bit like it was at this age in Sweden you have to kind of choose the route already when you turn 16. So before that you have to choose which school you want to go to and which program you want to study, if you want to go more the math science route or the other way. So you have to kind of decide a bit if you want to be a doctor or if you want to be a lawyer, this thing.
Big
so
decisions.
Exactly, at early age. So I don't really know. I just knew it was a very broad subject. And it just seemed interesting. So and I guess I thought it was a stable, more stable career, because then I was in a music class, so it was a bit more the other way. But so I applied for this type of school. And it was quite a good school, I would say, people with high grades and things like this. So it was a lot of studying, and you graduate this when you're 18 or 19, and this is the last compulsory school you have in Sweden. So after that, it's very common that you have a gap year before you start uni. So I decided I wanted to go to London to be an au pair, and So that I did. I found a girl who previously also studied in our school had done this with a family there. So I contacted her and I took over her role, basically. And it was really, really great to be in London. I fell in love with the city and everything it had to offer, and the family also super nice. You felt like they were inviting you as one of them, and just trying out the London life in a way. And I think after that I just knew that I always wanted to go back. But first I went back to Sweden to study law, to do my bachelor in business law. in Linköping University. So yeah, I did that, and also for the bachelor, the last dissertation I wrote about internal governance in banks. It was a new regulation that came out. So already then I was a bit into this this compliance internal governance topic. And then after that, it's the master of the business law in Sweden, and then you can do an exchange if you wish for the first term. So I chose London, and I came in, and since the master in London is 1 year, I was like, but why only do half a year if I can do one more term and get the master degree also from London? So I stayed 1 year, and the plan was then to go back to Sweden to do the second year of the Swedish master with the class that I was in before. But I decided I wanted to stay in London. And also for the masters in London, my dissertation was about a comparative study about compliance in the UK and Sweden.
God, that was an interesting deep dive about the analysis you could put behind those two subjects.
I mean, there was not a lot of different things as they follow the same directives and such. There was not big differences, I would say, at this point. Yeah.
Amazing. And then obviously from when you spent that year in London, how did that then convert into kind of moving into more of a commercialized setting, more so than anything else?
But then when the master finished, I still went back to Sweden. As previous years, I have been working for a bank in my hometown between studying. So then this summer as well, I was going to work there. So I went back, and I think this was my first like a bit more compliance job or task. And I did that, and at the same time I was looking for jobs in London, more permanent ones. And I think it took a bit longer than I thought. But yes, finally I got the job at the Serious Fraud Office, and I moved there again. And it was a very interesting job. I don't think I expected that beforehand. I started, but So and then I lived there again working.
And then obviously you moved from London and from the fraud side. And I always think fraud's something which is really interesting, because if you look at the analytics behind the fraud progression and also how fraud is actually set up from an overall perspective, it changes so much kind of company to company. So within the fraud space, was you designated to one particular area, or did you do more of the management or the analytics of it before moving on?
I did more about the bribery and corruption, and I was working on two different cases there. So as a paralegal.
Yes.
Reading a lot of documents, emails, and whatever things from the case findings, and I was also transcribing interviews and following to meetings with lawyers and taking minutes, and also following to court and taking minutes, and it was very interesting.
Good. And then obviously moving from there, how did the rest of your journey kind of continue?
I think I stayed there almost 2 years, and then I was still like, I want to get into compliance more. I was applying for jobs, also I would say quite a while. Then I went on holiday in Sweden during the summer, and came back, and during this time it was the time when when you had two phones or two phone numbers and changed SIM cards and such. So I hadn't had my English phone on when I was on holiday. So when I came back, I saw missed calls and emails and things, and from Luxembourg. And I was wondering, why are they calling from Luxembourg? And yeah, I had apparently applied for a job in Luxembourg, which I probably forgot. I was probably aware of, but I didn't really think about this role that I applied to, because I was more focused on London. But yeah, so they invited me for like career day, or these things that they have. It's a full day of interviews and some group work kind of. So yeah, I didn't know what to expect at all. I flew there, I think, the night before to Luxembourg. And yeah, went for the day. There was big presentations about the company, and then group work and interviews. And the longer the day went, you could be like knocked on the shoulder to that you're not moving forward, let's say.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So in the end of the day, we were I don't know, 10 people left or something like this, not so much. I had also the second interview with partner and such. And then after, there was a little ceremony where they basically gave you the offer, the contract, like ready in hand, like you got the job if you want. Yeah. So then, yeah. And then I had to go to my flight and flew back to London with the offer of starting in Luxembourg. And I think already then I knew that I would move to Luxembourg.
Yeah. And I suppose as well, obviously I can't comment too much on Sweden, but I've obviously been to London and I've also been to Luxembourg, and they are both two very, very different places. Yeah. What was the reason for kind of moving over to Luxembourg? Was it purely just work related, or how did you find that move?
No, I think I had visited Luxembourg before. When I studied law in Sweden, we did a visit to Luxembourg because of all the EU institutions.
Yeah.
So I knew it was like a little headquarters of finance and law and these things. So yeah, and I felt like Luxembourg is a bit of a mix of Sweden and London. It's very international, like London, and yeah, a bit like a lot of work opportunities, finance, and these things. But then on the other side, a bit more nature, a bit more small,
like the best of both worlds, isn't it? A bit of city and a bit of the countryside.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, and my plan was to work a bit here in Luxembourg to get like to a bit higher position, and then I would move back to London.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am still here, so.
So it's obviously doing something right. And I suppose as well, where you would purely look at the regulations from clearly quite a young age, there was an interest. When you go from the FCA or the PRA over to the CSSF and any kind of ECB guidelines, they change quite drastically. But also over the years, particularly with the CSSF in more recent years, there's been quite a kind of pin down on regulatory obligations and what it means to have a framework or an entity in those types of countries. So I suppose with you working with a variety of different regulators, how have you found that they've adapted to a more agile way of working?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there is differences for sure. I would say Sweden has always been quite in the forefront of tech and these things. I could see it already when moving countries. For example, with getting a bank and the banking system, and how, I don't know, the electrical system, like how all of these kind of things worked within the countries. So I would say it's a bit the same with the regulators as well. Sweden is quite agile, but I think Luxembourg is also very good lately.
They definitely have got it a lot more kind of pulled together. And I think when they predominantly used to do alternative investment funds, which they still are heavily focused on within that particular market, it's diversified quite a lot in recent years with some of the big exchanges over there and also some of the more smaller fintechs down to like the payment institutions. I suppose if we look at it from a pure funds industry then, and the application of regulations as technology was brought more into the nuance, did you see quite an impact of that, or was it fairly streamlined still?
Yeah, at this point I didn't see so much, also maybe from where I was standing or what I was working with.
Yeah. All right. And I suppose throughout your career, you've obviously done quite a lot. You've relocated to loads of places and also be involved in some of the changes. What would you say the biggest challenge has been within your career to date?
Well, the relocation is always it's a big thing.
It's even as simple, and I always say this to people with relocation, it's as simple as trying to find your favorite coffee shop again. Just where do you get coffee from in the morning? What's the quickest way to work? All of these really small aspects that in normal life we would never think about become so apparent. It's a complete life change.
Yeah, and you have exactly, you have to find out everything basically again, plus the new work, and also the different cultures, how it works at work, how you have lunch, how you
honestly, it blows my mind. And I think even if, for example, I moved from the UK to Amsterdam, and it's so close, it's a 45-minute flight, but the cultural differences are so, it's like what you just said, you know, when you have lunch, how you have lunch, how you interact with each other. In the UK, it's a little bit more conversational, whereas in the Netherlands, it's blunt and detail oriented and outcome driven. And everyone has lunch on time. It's a complete change. It is very true what they say in the UK. We kind of live to work, whereas over in Europe, they really work to live. And it's just, rather than just being there all the time and constantly working, it's taking a little bit of a step back and still being as efficient. But culturally, it was a huge shock, even to me, kind of moving that close.
That was a change exactly from UK to Luxembourg as well.
But even to go to the UK for you from Sweden as well.
Yeah, exactly. That was also because there is also more the hierarchy thing. In Sweden, it's a bit more flat in a way. And and in the UK you use the different Mr. or and the different ways of writing. That is also a change wherever you go. And but then also you have the new job, of course, to to learn, and the new colleagues and all of this, and the private life is also an important part, that you have a nice the private life that you either can rest or gain energy from. So it's a lot.
It is starting again, even friendship groups. Obviously, if you go to Sweden, you probably have your established friendship group from school, but then you kind of really have to put yourself out when you go to new countries to make an effort to make friends and find new friendship groups and explore different hobbies to meet people. So although we all probably focus on the professional side to begin with, it doesn't take long for the personal side to have a bit more of an impact there as well when you're trying to rebuild both aspects of your life. Which is actually it's a challenge that most people don't do, but you're seeing it a lot more of people actually taking that little step now to look at the relocation for job opportunities and seeing it as a benefit rather than anything to be hesitant about. So it's a challenge, but I would always recommend a challenge worth taking, because you learn so much about yourself and you grow so much more.
And you learn like from each other. I think it's good to have a people with different backgrounds in general.
Well, it just brings an additional thought process at the same time, because then you're not it's like I always say, if you have 10 me's, you're only really going to go like this. Whereas if you have one me and kind of 9 different people, you'll just continuously climb, because there's just different thought processes, different ideas, different way of doing things, which are needed.
Yeah, for sure.
And I suppose just to kind of turn that question around then, with that being one of your biggest challenges, what would you say one of your biggest standout successes are across your career?
Well, when I started my previous company after Deloitte, it was my first, let's say, full compliance private firm role. So I was hired as a compliance manager, and just that I started a month in, we receive a letter from the CSSF that they will have an AML inspection, AML audit, and they had never had that before. So
that's a shock.
Really, it was really an intense start for me to dig into the company's everything related to AML, basically, and for me to feel that I'm secure with that everything is in line, that the policies are updated, that the clients, we have what we need from the clients, that systems are working well, and so basically I went through everything with this. And I had to cancel some holidays because they were coming in the summer, and
summer as well, which is the most flat time for any organization.
So I was staying in Luxembourg, basically being here when they were on site, looking at everything, being the help and the contact of them, and it was some intense weeks, intense start, but it went well. So
So although there's always the background of you've had to cancel your holiday, you're working extra, you're trying to get something in, when they come in and they give it the green light, there's so much adrenaline from that, just to be able to say, oh, I managed to actually do it in its path of flying colours, particularly when it's the first one that they've done as well. Because it's not like they know what they're coming in to look at. So there's a lot of gap analysis which goes into the actual identification of what they're doing. So to be able to cover all of that, having just joined, I think is a massive success to definitely count. And I suppose as well, just to start winding the conversation down, one question I always love to ask is, when you first started your career, what advice would you give to your younger self that you know now that you didn't know back then?
Well, in general, I would say just to be open, to be curious and brave, and this will keep you moving forward all the time.
I really like that one. I think with those 3 things as well, it kind of just gives someone that little bit of a shove, just to step outside of their comfort zone and just to be open. Exactly. I think it's open to change, isn't it?
Yes, for sure. Especially in compliance. I mean, it's so changing.
I think you have to be really open to being compliance to change. But look, thank you so much for joining. It's been really, really, really great to hear your story, and also have you as part of the podcast, and just understand, what got you to where you are, how you've had to adapt to the change in the environment, how you found it from a challenge of the relocation, and just the adaptation as well of the actual regulatory impact. So it was really interesting. So thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me.